Hello and welcome back to the Level Up English podcast. My name is Michael and today I'm talking all about being super silly and not taking yourself too seriously. So this was an idea I had from last week because over on the private podcast at Level Up English, I reflected on and spoke a little bit about my experience going to China. I went to China 2 weeks ago from the time of this recording. And I was talking on Friday about the benefit of being silly in your language learning and why this might help you improve faster in your English, perhaps. In my opinion, I thought this was a really interesting idea and potentially a useful one to hear about as well. So I decided to turn it into a public podcast episode today, and hopefully you will find it useful as well. So in this episode today, I'm going to be talking about why you shouldn't take yourself too seriously and how you can insert more silliness into your life. And perhaps how this can benefit you both in your English learning journey and more generally in life. So let's get into it and I will reveal my secrets. By the way, if you do want to hear that private podcast episode and all the others, we have about 80 private episodes at the moment, then this is all available for Level Up English members. In addition to the private podcast, members get access to group classes. We've got 2 classes a week at the moment on Friday and Saturday. We have courses to help improve your grammar, writing, pronunciation, vocabulary, training course for the IELTS exam, and also podcast transcripts. So it's a really good way to practice your reading, listening, vocabulary. There's all this stuff that you can learn when you're looking at the subtitles for these episodes. And it does take me a long time to make each transcript, so that is one reason why they are available to members only. So people who support me, I really appreciate it, and in return, I try to give some benefits back as well. If you want to join, there is a link in your podcast app that says become a member, or you can go to levelupenglish.school and click on the members button at the top of the page. So before in the introduction, I used that phrase, take yourself too seriously. This is a common collocation. That means a common set of words that are used together. And it just means to think of yourself in a really serious way. Maybe you're someone who doesn't smile, you don't laugh very often, and you're just too serious about things. So we use the verb take. Take yourself too seriously. So maybe first of all, we can talk about how you know if you're taking yourself too seriously. One thing I think a huge thing is you care too much about what people think of you. Now, this will be obvious why this is going to be beneficial for language learners, but this is something that I have felt a lot in the past, where you go into a public place, maybe for some reason you're not so confident in what you're saying, what you're wearing, how you look, whatever it is, and you're thinking that people are judging you. They're going to be thinking negative things about you. And this is a sign that you're taking yourself too seriously. Imagine if you're walking in public and you trip on something on the floor and you fall over. Do you think that everyone's going to be looking at you, laughing at you, judging you? If that's the case, you may be taking yourself too seriously, because the reality is most people won't care if you fall over, which is the harsh truth. And a lot of people will actually just feel sympathy for you. They want to help you. They want to make sure you're okay. They're not judging you in that moment. So imagine that happens to you. Do you think it's better to kind of hold your head down in shame and run away? Or is it better just to kind of laugh it off? So that's another good phrase today, which we might use a few times. Laugh it off. I suppose this is a phrasal verb, to laugh something off. Usually we say it in between. And this is where you laugh to kind of remove any bad feelings, remove any tension, any embarrassment, awkwardness, something like that. So rather than being embarrassed and ashamed of falling over in public, you can laugh it off. So you go, ha ha ha, you laugh, and it removes any awkward feelings from that situation. So there's an example of just kind of approaching life with a more positive and a casual mindset. And I think it's going to make you happier, isn't it, if you can laugh it off? Another example is you don't want to make any mistakes in your English. And I think this is another sign that you might be taking things too seriously and taking yourself too seriously. You're too afraid to say something wrong in English, so you never actually say anything. And obviously that's not good for improving. I think we'll come back to this later, but I think to have a good mind for language learning, to be a good language learner, it's really important to be casual and light-hearted and not be afraid to make mistakes. So if you do make a mistake, rather than going, oh, I'm so bad at languages, I'm so bad, how come I don't know that? You're being too serious. You need to be like, oh, that's such a silly thing to say. I can't believe I said that. Oh well, now I know what to say next time. But it's really important to laugh at yourself and learn from these mistakes, isn't it? Anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit. I wanted to give another sign that you may be taking life too seriously. And that is you don't play enough, or you don't laugh enough. So play, this word play, is often associated with children, right? And it doesn't have to mean playing with toys, if you're an adult. But there's many different ways we can play. It just means have fun. So when was the last time you did something not to make any progress, not for work, not for some end goal? I think the definition of play is to do something for its own sake. In other words, you're doing something because you like it. There's no reason, going to the gym because you want to get big muscles, that's not play, because you have the goal of getting muscles. In play, I'd say the only goal is to have fun, right? You're not really working towards an end goal with play. So that could be many different things to different people. It could just be a hobby that you have. It might be just kicking a ball around a field. But it's really important, I think, if you're playing football, but you're trying to get better, that may not be play. That's not like pure play. Would you agree, maybe? I would say pure play is when you're just kicking a ball around a field and you don't care how good you are. You're just trying to have fun, you're trying to be silly, but you're not trying to get better at football. Or you're not trying to do it because you want to be healthy. And I think this is something that a lot of us stop doing as we get older. It could be like that football example, or it could be like when you go for a walk. Why don't you walk on the wall instead of the path? Sometimes you're walking along the side of a road and there's like a wall. It's not a tall one, but maybe just a few bricks high. It's small enough where you can step up on the wall. And this is something that kids do a lot, but adults kind of feel like, I'm too serious. I'm too mature to do that. I can't do that anymore. But little things like that, where you can just, hey, I want to walk here. I'm going to walk here. You know what I mean? Have a little bit more play and fun in your life. Like these little things make a difference, I think. So if you find that you're not doing that, you're caring too much about what people think of you, you're not playing, you're not laughing enough, then this is a sign that maybe you could consider adding some more silliness back into your life, perhaps. So now I want to talk about why you should not take things too seriously. I already mentioned a little bit with the language learning, but one reason, I think in general, is that you don't have control for most of your life. Maybe we have this illusion of control. You think you know what's going to happen. Being too serious about your life and what happens is often a result of trying too hard to change your life and worrying about what's going to happen. And of course, it's really important to remember that worrying, well, in my opinion, as far as I can think, worrying doesn't help anything. It's very natural to worry, but it doesn't help you achieve anything if you're more worried and anxious about it. And I think this is one difference between children and adults as well. I think children are very good at living in the moment and taking one day at a time. Children, for the most part, they go to school, they have fun, they come home, they have fun, but they're not thinking about, I've got 4 more days of school until Saturday. A lot of kids don't really think that way until they maybe become a teenager. And I think adults really have this problem. We really think too far ahead. We're thinking about, I've got all this work to do, and we're not just trying to enjoy what we're doing right now. So don't try to control everything in your life. Maybe be a bit more relaxed and casual. I think that's a great way to not be so serious about things, not worry so much. Very simply, I think you would just enjoy your life less as well. If you take things so seriously, you'll just have less fun, of course. So if you really want to be happier in life, I think you should kind of approach things with a more light-hearted and casual mind. And I don't want to talk today like I am necessarily giving advice to everyone, like I know what the best way is. I think a lot of what I'm saying today is advice that I'm kind of giving myself. So if this doesn't apply to you, if you feel like it doesn't make sense to you, that's fine. This makes sense to me and hopefully others as well. But as always, I will tie it back more to language learning at the end. Another reason why you shouldn't take life too seriously is one, because you will fail to learn lessons from your life. I think approaching things in a more casual way allows you to reflect on the mistakes you made and the things you did in the past more easily. And maybe if you have a more serious mindset, you are more likely to just move on and not think about it. You want to forget about any mistakes you made as quickly as possible, which I would say is not ideal. And I think people will just like you less. This is just my opinion, but I really admire people who can avoid being too serious and not thinking so highly of themselves. I think being self-important is not a nice trait. It's not a nice thing to be. And that word self-importance is just that feeling you have of yourself. Like, I am really special. I'm a special, unique person. And having too much of that is not a nice thing to have in someone. It just doesn't feel right, does it? So I wrote down here some ideas on how you can take things less seriously in your life. And one that came to my mind was the Taoist method. So I'm quite interested in different Eastern philosophies, like Taoism is one. It has, I guess, some crossover with Buddhism, if you haven't heard of it before. But it's spelled in English, it's spelled T-A-O. That's Tao, but it's spelled pronounced with a D normally. And then ism, like Buddhism, Taoism, right? So one thing that is said in Taoism quite a lot is to be like water, right? If you're watching water, flow down a river, don't try to change the direction of your path of your life. Just flow with water. So we have this phrase in English, which is go with the flow. And if you go with the flow, you're going to be struggling a lot less in your life because you're going with the natural curves of life, of the river in this analogy. And if you do try to worry and plan too much, it's almost like trying to hold on to water. You can hold on tightly and get really anxious about it, but the water will always slip out of your hands anyway. As I said before, I also think it's really important to laugh at yourself. So if you fall over and you're not too badly hurt, just laugh at yourself, brush yourself off, and I think people admire others who can do that. I mean, I certainly do. With language learning, if you make a mistake, learn to laugh at yourself. And I think this also subconsciously, it secretly tricks your brain into not being afraid of making mistakes. If you make a mistake and then you really think, oh no, I can't believe I did that, then your brain's going to think next time, let's not make any mistakes. I don't want to repeat that same feeling. So learning to laugh at yourself is really important. One thing that's helped me as well is noticing mistakes in others. I think that's a really good benefit of group classes, which is why I focus a lot on group classes with Level Up English these days is that, well, I mean, there's many benefits. Like, you're in that supportive environment, you're learning together. But I think it's also quite nice to see that other people are making mistakes too. Maybe they're making the same mistakes as you, or maybe they're making different mistakes that you know the right way to say it. And the purpose of noticing others' mistakes is not to think, I'm better than them, I know how to say that. Again, it's not having that feeling of self-importance. It's thinking, oh, they make a mistake too. I also make mistakes, and it makes you feel less alone. So it's nice to see that everyone is in the same position and no one speaks perfectly. In fact, if I make any mistakes in this episode in my English, please let me know. I'm sure I have, but it might be good practice for you to point it out, leave a comment, and I will let you know if I think it is a mistake. But in my opinion, any English podcaster, any English person who speaks in a casual way like me, anyone who says that they don't make any mistakes is probably lying. So if you want to listen to natural English, there will be mistakes in there. One huge thing as well, this kind of applies to my life this week, is to develop a positive mindset. And you can do this by trying to change the way that you're thinking, to expect things to work. Expect things will work out. So, for example, this week, I have been waiting in my new place here to get internet, to get Wi-Fi. I finally got it. I got it yesterday and it is fast. I'm happy. It's really good. But yeah, I had a couple of weeks without Wi-Fi, which was really tough for someone who works on the internet. And I noticed in myself that I had kind of a negative mindset. I was kind of expecting it wouldn't work. So when the kind of people came to install the Wi-Fi, they had to put cables in the ceiling. I was kind of expecting something would go wrong. So if something did go wrong, I probably would have said to myself, I knew it. I knew it wouldn't work. Just as I predicted, it did not work. And if it had gone well, I imagine I would have said, it was just a fluke. It was a one-time accident, and I guess I just got lucky this time. It's a really negative way of thinking. By the way, I mentioned that word fluke just now. That's a good word. A fluke, it's a noun, and it's when something happens by chance, right? It's just total chance, totally random. It was a fluke, right? Maybe you said a perfect grammatical sentence in English, and your teacher might go, "Oh, well done, good sentence," and you go, "Oh, it was just a fluke. I think it was an accident." So that's a good word to use, F-L-U-K-E. But yeah, so rather than do that, I try to change my mindset about the internet situation and think, maybe this is going to work. I think it's going to work, and even if it doesn't work, I'll figure it out. We're going to figure something out. It's going to be fine. And it did work in the end, and yeah, there was no worry about it, which was nice. Another thing is try not to please everyone. You cannot please everyone, so don't try to do that. Another reminder is to realize that no one really cares about you. No one thinks about you that much. I suppose people do care about you in a caring way, but no one judges you. Let's put it that way. No one thinks about you as much as you think they do, which for some people is not a nice thing to think about because we like to feel like we're special. But for me, it's quite comforting to know that whatever I do, especially the bad things, people will not care that much, honestly. One last tip I will give in how to take yourself less seriously is to focus on your body language as well. So one thing that I've read about and I've tried to practice in my own life is how often your mood and how you feel comes after your body language, how your body is moving. So a really simple way to practice this is just your back and your shoulder. I think shoulders are a good one, actually. So if there is distance between your shoulders and your ears, it makes you feel more confident. It makes you feel less shy and awkward, especially in a public place. If you sit with your shoulders up close to your ears, you're kind of hiding your neck. And what I heard is the purpose of that is you're hiding your vulnerable area. Vulnerable means it's an area that is weak and could be, attacked. If someone attacks your neck, you could die, couldn't you? So it's kind of a sign that you're not comfortable because you're hiding the important and weak areas of your body. So if you go to a public place and you're sat like that, really low down with your shoulders up, it doesn't feel good. But then if you sit really straight with your shoulders down and your head and neck high, then it makes you feel good. So I think if you can try to position your body in a way that looks like you're confident and looks like you are positive and happy, then your mood will follow that as well. And that's just a great way not to worry about things and not to be too serious about things if you can feel confident and happy in who you are. But okay, I've rambled enough about that first part already. Let's talk a bit about language learning now. This whole conversation came from me in China, and I was being a bit silly with my language learning. So what I mean by that is that whenever I thought of something to say, I would just say it, right? No matter who I was with, if I thought of a good phrase to say, I would just say it right there. And the one that came to my mind that was, it's not like really crazy or anything, it's quite a simple one, but I think it was a bit silly, is I just climbed a mountain and I had some crisps with me, some kind of snacks to have at the top. And I kind of wanted to say, like in English, okay, this is my reward for climbing the mountain. I'm going to have my reward now, or my prize, something like that. But I didn't know how to say reward. I didn't really know how to say the whole sentence. So I just said, this is my success snack, right? And I don't know how that sounds in Chinese. Maybe that sounds okay. But in English, it sounds a bit weird, right? A success snack? What is that? What does that mean? We wouldn't really say that in English. So it's a little bit strange. And I imagine in Chinese, it's also a little bit strange. But that's what I got in the habit of doing, is just when I thought of a good phrase, I would just say it. And maybe it wasn't always natural. Maybe it wasn't always the best thing to say. But my approach on that trip was saying something is better than saying nothing. Another example is when I was in the car and I would see some dangerous driving, I would just point out, oh, danger, danger. I would just point at the car and say danger. No, obviously they wouldn't see me do that, but to the people in the car with me, I would say danger. And, people laughed at me because they thought it was kind of cute or funny, I suppose. But now, the word for danger is really stuck in my head in Chinese. So that's one big benefit, is it's much easier to remember these new phrases because you're using them more. If you can use them more, it will become easier to remember. And a huge thing, this is a huge part of the point I'm making today, is silly things and unusual things are easier to remember, right? So this is why when you're making example sentences for new words that you're trying to practice, make them as silly as you can. Let's say you want to practice the word evaporate. Evaporate. This is kind of a scientific word, right? You could say, rainwater evaporates and turns into clouds. It's pretty boring. It's true, but it's not a really interesting, exciting sentence, and it might be quite easy to forget that sentence. But if you made kind of a silly story about it, like off the top of my head, let me think of one. I dropped my juice on the floor, but then my juice evaporated, and as it was evaporating, I drank it again. I drank it in the form of a cloud, right? Really weird idea, really doesn't really make any sense. Scientifically, I don't think that's possible. But it's a little bit sillier, so it's going to be easier to remember that word, hopefully. I don't know. Maybe you can think of a better one for me, but maybe let me know in the comments. Think of a word that you're learning recently or you want to learn, and try to make a really silly, strange sentence with that word. It doesn't have to be anything realistic at all. And see if that makes it easier to remember. I was also thinking about how babies learn as well, or children learn, and they don't really have any reservations in what they say. which means they don't really care if they say things wrong. If a baby wants to say something, they just say it. And usually it's going to be really, really wrong. The pronunciation's bad, maybe the grammar's wrong. They will say cutted. I cutted myself instead of cut, for example. And it doesn't really matter. Even if you correct them, they don't feel embarrassed about it, right? So I think that's one of the biggest benefits that a child or baby has in learning a language, is they just say what they want to say without caring about if it's right or wrong. And I think we can really learn something from that aspect of how children learn. If you do this method, most of the time, I'm sure you will be fine. What you say will be correct a lot of the time. And if it's not correct, you also have that bonus benefit that people might correct you. If you say something that sounds a bit strange, people might say, actually, here is how you say it. And you go, okay, interesting, thank you. And you kind of accept their correction, again, in a positive and casual way. It's also a really good way to remember words as well. Because, for example, that phrase for success snack that I said on the mountain, the word for success and the word for snack, they're stuck in my head now because phrases and words become much easier to remember when we have a memory connected with them. If I say, learn the word evaporate, you probably won't learn it. But if you are on, let's say, for example, you're on a first date, you're meeting a girl or a guy, you're really excited, there's lots of romance and special feelings, and together you're talking about evaporating. Really exciting conversation for a first date, isn't it? But because you have that nice memory connected with the word, it's very likely you'll remember that word for a long, long time. And if the memory can have a strong emotion connected to it, even better. If you're really happy or sad or scared or excited, then it becomes more, it just becomes more special in your mind and therefore easier to remember. So that's one benefit as well. When you can connect a word to a memory, it sticks in your mind much more. It's a great way to learn vocabulary and avoid forgetting. So this episode has been a bit rambly. So when you ramble, it's you talk and it feels like there isn't any point. But I hope somewhere in my words today, you have found something useful. That being a little bit silly in your language learning can benefit you and help you remember more. And of course, as I mentioned earlier, it has many benefits in your life as well. You enjoy life more. You don't care what others think of you. There's many benefits to taking yourself less seriously. Okay, I'll end it there before I ramble any longer, but thank you for listening to that. Let's just say a quick thank you to the Prince of Persia. This is a review I got on Apple Podcasts. They said, "Hey Michael, I hope you are doing well. I listened to your podcast from Iran, and your podcast is very helpful for me. Please make more podcasts about IELTS. Have a good day, man." So thank you very much to Prince of Persia. Appreciate that review. And yeah, I will do more about IELTS in the future. I know a lot of people like the IELTS episodes, but the truth is that most people are not taking the exam. So for some people, they will love those episodes. For most people, it will not be that interesting. So that's why I don't do too many of them. But every now and then, I will do an IELTS exam episode. Let's look at a quote to end today's episode. And this is from Albert Hubbard. Very appropriate one. "Don't take life too seriously. You'll never get out of it alive." I think that's a nice reminder that why be serious, right? Anyway, on the private podcast this Friday, I'm going to be talking about times in my life when I have made silly mistakes. I think it could be interesting to talk about. But hope you enjoyed today. Thanks for stopping by, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye, everyone. You have been listening to the Level Up English podcast. If you would like to leave a question to be answered on a future episode, then please go to levelupenglish.school/podcast. That's levelupenglish.school/podcast. and I'll answer your question on a future episode. Thanks for listening.